How did the world begin? Scientists tell us it began with the Big Bang. The Bible tells us it began with a big mess, known in Hebrew as tohu vavohu, or chaos and confusion. The creation story is all about God bringing order to the chaos, putting things in their proper places, tidying up, if you will. In our lives, too, there's something very powerful about this kind of process. In fact, when my universe feels out of control, I find solace in watching Marie Kondo tidy other people's homes. Her steady and soothing presence inspires confidence in me that I too can conquer the chaos around me and regain a sense of order, or at least enjoy watching her do that for someone else. The life-changing magic of tidying up holds out a tantalizing promise. Marie can take your personal tohu vavohu and, like God, bring an orderly world into being. No pile of clothing is too high, no stuffed closet too far gone. Undaunted, Marie calmly guides the owner toward a more manageable, neater future. If only all our problems could be solved by learning to roll them up neatly and stick them in a drawer. But what do we do when we are the tohu vavohu, when we feel a sense of chaos within ourselves? Researchers have found that increasingly over the last 2 years, Americans feel less in control, more stressed out, and as a result of our stress, we're more irritable and angry. More and more we feel on edge, snapping at our loved ones, letting our anger explode at colleagues, community members, and even strangers who cross our path on the road, in the no longer so friendly skies, and online. There's been a significant surge in people unleashing their anger in public places, even resorting to violence. And a lot of this for us personally is understandable, living through a pandemic. According to the American Psychological Association, the many troubling issues we face, from racial injustice, gender inequality, economic inequality, the climate crisis, political upheavals, the pandemic, and its immeasurable losses, have led to what researchers are calling a gnawing sense of irritability. They attribute the source of our irritability to extreme fatigue and the feeling of being overwhelmed, a sense that we're being stretched too thin. Attempting to balance work and caring for children month after month, worrying about aged parents, worrying about what's happening to our country and the planet, struggling with illness and financial strains, all these and more have turned us into marathon runners, and many of us feel like we're running on empty. When we're stretched thin, inadequacy grows, and our feelings of control and confidence shrink, write Dr. Julie Fraga and Dr. Hilly Jacobs-Hendel. As a result, we're quicker to lose our tempers with the people around us. Even our teeth are suffering from our growing irritability. According to the American Dental Association's Health Policy Institute, 70% of dentists surveyed said they've seen an increase in the number of patients with teeth grinding and clenching, which are often linked to stress. Perhaps hearing this sermon is making your jaw clench, your stomach flip-flop, or your heart race as you think about maybe your own lack of patience at small slights or the ways you felt stretched far too thin this year. Maybe under all this pressure, you don't much like the person you've become. Fortunately for us, that's what Yom Kippur is all about. The negative behaviors we confess to today include our propensity to quarrel, rashly judge others, and resort to violence. Notice that anger is not listed among them. Anger is a healthy and normal emotion. It's not a sin to feel or express anger. In fact, it can be a highly useful emotion. According to the 2014 book, The Upside of Your Dark Side, anger can increase optimism, creativity, and effective performance by motivating us to change and to change our environment. It can motivate us to stand up and fight for justice and for social equality. As Rebecca Traister explains in Good and Mad, the revolutionary power of women's anger. But our sages were deeply concerned about the downside of our dark side. Anger seems to have a life of its own, like a demon that inhabits us and changes our normal composure, writes Susan Freeman in Teaching Jewish Virtues. Is anger an automatic response, or do we have some control over it? And what to do about anger? Some pop psychology encourages us to express our anger as if there is danger in holding everything back. Still, from experience and observation, we may have discovered that giving free rein to anger can lead to unpleasant results. Venting anger without restraint can alienate and hurt others. Our rabbis understood that simply letting our anger out does not necessarily make us feel better or improve our situation. Bar Kapara teaches in the Talmud, Ragzan la'alta biyado ele ragzanuta. Rage produces nothing but more rage. Pirkei Avot calls a person who gets angry easily and holds on to their anger a rasha, a wicked person. Our sages define a person of strength, a gibor, as one who can control their temper. As it says in Proverbs, one who is slow to anger is better than the mighty. One who rules their spirit is better than one who conquers a city. In a story about Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, a 2nd century sage in the land of Israel, the rabbi is on the run from the Roman Empire for comments he made denigrating Rome. He hides out in a cave for 12 years, and when he emerges, he sees people going about their daily lives, plowing and sowing, and he is enraged that they're spending their time doing ordinary work and neglecting Torah study. So overcome by anger is Rabbi Shimon that fire comes forth from his eyes. Everything he looks at instantly bursts into flames. Then a divine voice calls out, "Did you come out from the cave in order to destroy my world? Return to your cave." Did Rabbi Shimon's eyes actually set fire? I think it's more likely a metaphor for what happens when we get frustrated and our anger overtakes us. The slightest spark ignites us and we incinerate those who happen to be in our vicinity. Being in the cave for all those years gave Rabbi Shimon a very short fuse. So once he was back in the world, normal social situations became intolerable and triggered his rage. Perhaps something similar is happening with many of us as we emerge from our COVID caves and begin re-engaging with the world. Giving in to explosive anger has a high cost. It wreaks havoc on our bodies and damages our relationships. Clearly, writes Freeman, it's far better to master our anger than the other way around, having it master us. Working on the midah, the moral virtue of being slow to anger, in Hebrew, erech apayim, is how Jewish tradition teaches us to start taking charge of our anger. We'll hear about God's erech apayim many times today, as this quality is listed among the Holy One's 13 attributes, the shlosha esrei midot, these express God's essence. These 13 attributes are set forth in the book of Exodus chapter 34, when Moses beseeches God not to destroy the Israelites after the sin of the golden calf. Moses reminds God that it is God's nature to forgive and to be patient with humanity. Our sages inserted this passage in the liturgy to convey an important message to us. These divine attributes are also available to human beings, for we are made in the divine image. By chanting these traits today, we're not only imploring God to forgive us, we're reminding ourselves that human beings too can be slow to anger, and we can try to draw on our own capacity to be patient and forgiving. It's interesting to note that sometimes in the Torah, God displays rather poor anger management, exploding in anger and unleashing destruction, a destructive fury. Think of the flood that wiped out all of creation, or God unleashing fiery serpents on the fetching Israelites in the desert. In such moments, the Torah gives us a very human God, reminding us that we're not alone in our struggle to master our anger. The 13 attributes represent the divine ideal, God's best self, as it were. And so too, these are qualities that we strive to cultivate throughout our lives. How do we become a person who is erech apayim, slow to anger? Rabbi Zelig Pliskin, in a book called Anger, the Inner Teacher, provides several suggestions. One way is to keep an anger journal, noting the times we blow up, noticing the situations that tend to set us off. Maybe it's when we're tired or hungry. I can relate to that. Maybe it's when people fail to meet our expectations, or we feel others are not showing up or showing us respect, or we feel threatened in some way. Having become aware of situations in which we're vulnerable, we can train ourselves to stay calm and think more clearly. The word erech means long or stretched out. We strive to become slow to anger by slowing down our interactions, stretching out our reaction time. So we think about how we'd like to respond rather than just lashing out and being short with someone. We can count to 10 or 20 or 50, whatever it takes, he says, before responding to a provocation. And as Marie Kondo would say, another rabbi in my book, it always helps to take a deep breath, or many deep breaths. We can learn to take long, deep breaths, perhaps repeating a calming phrase like salvlanut v'shalom, patience and peace, patience and peace. We can learn the value of taking a break when we're upset, going outside for a while into nature, as the Wroclawer Rebbe taught, to be alone with ourselves and alone with God. We can prepare for difficult encounters by thinking them through in advance, anticipating problems and making a plan for ourselves and how we'll handle them calmly. We can look at ourselves in the moment, in the mirror, when we're angry. Sometimes noticing the way we look physically in those moments can provide a powerful motivation to change. We can practice the mitzvah of kaf zchut, judging others favorably, rather than jumping to conclusions and attributing the worst motives to them. We can practice kvod habriot, seeing other people, including those who habitually irritate us, as creatures like ourselves, human beings, flawed as we are, but still worthy of compassion and respect. We can also practice hakarat hatov, focusing on the good qualities of others rather than seeing only their imperfections. And we can persist in these practices over time, enlisting the support of others, including professional help if we need it, noticing how other people handle stressful situations, and asking the ones we admire, how did you do that? How did you get through that without losing your temper? We can notice and celebrate the occasions on which we control our behavior rather than letting it control us. None of this is easy, but all of it is worthwhile. And best of all, it works. I know one man who learned to conquer his habit of swearing at other drivers on the freeway, this was back in California where we call it a freeway, by driving more slowly and reminding himself repeatedly that he was setting a bad example for his children. I know another who deliberately trained himself to be more gentle and less irritable after his father died of a heart attack at a young age. I know a woman who was frightened by the rage she expressed towards her children. And after some time in therapy, she learned to respond more often like the patient and loving mom she wanted to be. I appreciate the fact that Jewish tradition does not try to eliminate anger. The Rambam taught that mastery of anger means that we can take it out and use it like a tool when it's appropriate and necessary. But we remain in charge of what we're doing. So sometimes when someone has done something very wrong, we're going to let them know we're angry. And sometimes we'll consciously and deliberately use our anger at the way things are in this world to energize ourselves and to work for change. Rabbi Pliskin called his book Anger the Inner Teacher because he believes that anger, more than any other feeling, can teach us about ourselves. He writes, anger teaches us what we really consider our true priorities in life. If you want to know whether a particular person places a higher value on material or spiritual attainments, observe what makes that person angry. Anger also lets us know which qualities we've already developed and which need further work. Do we rejoice in the opportunity to help others, or do we resent every intrusion on our time? Our response to others' requests will hold the answer. The way we speak when we're angry reveals a great deal about our spiritual level. Anger teaches us about our awareness of God. Anger teaches us about our level of love and compassion for others. Anger teaches us about our level of humility and patience. Anger teaches us about our need to control others. Anger provides important clues about our level of self-esteem. Anger teaches us about our ability to judge others favorably. Anger teaches us about our level of communication and reveals our level of impulsiveness. Anger teaches us whether we view ourselves with a good eye or a bad eye, whether we tend to focus more on the positive or the negative. Anger shows us how considerate we are of the dignity and feelings of others. Anger teaches us how easy or difficult it is for us to forgive others. Anger also teaches us when we're making progress in all of these areas. I want to carry Rabbi Pliskin's words with me into this new year, and I want to hold on to them throughout these holy days. Rather than beat ourselves up for all the anger we may have felt this year, I hope instead we'll be instructed by it. Our blow-ups help us understand what's been going on in our lives, how we've suffered and struggled, how we want to grow. Perhaps when we gently strike our hearts during the vidui, the confession of sins, we can focus on our wish to bring more forgiveness to our hearts, more compassion to our inner lives, extending kindness to those around us, and especially to ourselves. Even the smallest act of conquering the chaos within can have a profound effect on us, on our relationships, and on the world around us. So please, join me in taking a long, deep breath. Thank you to Marie Kondo for suggesting the deep breath. And with this deep breath, may we move forward into a year of greater understanding and peace. Gamar Chatima Tova.